Hey traders, Jason here from Leavitt Brothers. Before I get started, quick note. I recorded a podcast with @ChicagoSean. Assuming you're watching this on YouTube, there's a link in the notes below, so you should go check that out. Okay, moving on. In this video, I'm going to show a few trade examples from the last month. Okay, my system is simple. I get a bias from a longer term time frame, and then I zoom in with a shorter time frame to get a low risk entry. Trading is easy to learn, but it's not necessarily easy to do. I try to simplify and dumb things down as much as possible. So let's go through a couple of examples. Here is ZUO. Okay, IPO traded flat, moved up, came down, and then moved up again. So the question is, how did I trade this? Okay, so first of all, we have a positive divergence here. Okay, lower low, positive divergence with the MACD histogram. Okay, second thing I see is that the MACD right over here gets above zero right there, and it gets above zero at the same time that the stochastic is already trending up. Okay, so this combination of I'm on the daily chart, I get a positive divergence, the MACD crosses up, and the stochastic is already trending up, tells me, hey, this is a stock that you want to zoom in and look for a long entry. Okay, so remember, this is end of July, beginning of August. I'm looking for a long entry. Now let's zoom in on the 60-minute chart. Here is the period over here, end of July, beginning of August. Okay, so what you see here is the stock moves off a low, and then it has this consolidation pattern right here, right underneath the hourly 50. Okay, this gives you a really good stop. Okay, where's your entry? It's tough. Some people play a breakout. Some people will buy within the range. The important thing is, where's your stop? And in this case, the stop is obviously going to be below the range. Okay. Then the stock moves up, gets rejected by the hourly 200, comes back down, finds support at the 50. Then it moves up again, comes back down and finds support at the 200, and then it moves up from there. Okay, so at first, a stop is going to be below here. Then once this area gets solidified as a resistance, as a support level, remember, this is the old, you can draw a trend line here. This was a former resistance level. Now it's acting as support here. The 50 is acting as support. Okay, so your stop could be moved up to there. You get like a 15% move up to here, which in my eyes is good enough for me to take at least partial profits. I'm not going to let a 15% loss go against me too much. Once it solidifies support at the 200, again, stop could be raised, and then the stock moves up from there. Okay, so I get a bias from the daily chart. The daily chart told me this is a stock that you want to get long. I zoom in with the hourly chart in this case, and I'm using a combination of moving averages and support and resistance levels to simply define an acceptable entry. Not an acceptable entry, to define an acceptable stop, and then I just look for an entry after that. Okay, let's look at another example. Here is ZS. Okay, another IPO stock, went public, traded flat, jumped out of a base, wasn't even paying attention to it at this point in time. Then as it started to roll up and down in a range, I definitely started paying attention. So the first thing I noticed was that we had kind of like a rectangle pattern here showing or forming. Okay, so the stock had gone up and then was consolidating. I was thinking this stock was going to eventually break up to the upside and trade to the high 40s. Okay, you have a stock that's moving up, consolidate for a couple months. I'm looking for a continuation of the trend. So from here, I want to zoom in. Okay, so what we see here is when it starts to get over here, we have a positive, well, not a positive divergence, but we have the MACD getting closer and closer to zero, and eventually it gets above zero. The MACD crosses, and it crosses at the same time the stochastic is already trending up. Okay, so I like this because I don't really want to buy at 42.5, 43 when it breaks out, because this range is so big. I like to buy within the range, so I'm getting a buy signal in the middle of the range. And I want to zoom in with the hourly chart to find a good entry. Okay, another thing I notice here is that you can draw a trend line here, and you have a big white candle there and a big white candle there. So we have two positive, at the same time the MACD is crossing up, the stochastic is moving up. You have two big positive days that take out a resistance line and take out the high here. Okay, so everything looks good. I want to get long, but sometimes the entry isn't apparent on a daily chart. So I want to zoom in with an hourly chart and see if I can find a decent entry that gives me an acceptable stop. Okay, so we're talking mid-August here. This move here, those two big white candle days that I pointed out, that's this move right here. Okay, so like this was a whoops, let me get rid of that. This was one of the resistance levels. This was the previous high that was taken out. I'm getting buy signals in here on the daily chart, so I want to zoom in here on the hourly chart and look for an entry. This move right here, where those two big white days, I'm looking to buy a pullback, or I'm looking to buy some sort of consolidation pattern. Okay, maybe this trades sideways in a range, and I'll be able to, once it maybe it does a little bottom, maybe it does a little flag pattern, maybe it does a little double bottom within a range, and I'll be able to define a stop. In this case, the stock simply pulled back. Okay, it pulled back. It established a support level at 39, which was close to the previous resistance. We also have, as you can see here, we have both the 200 and the 50 hourly moving averages right here. So you have really good support here, both in terms of the moving averages and the previous highs, the previous activity. So you have an entry here, and as you see, it goes from 30, the high 39s all the way up to like the high 40s. Okay, and of course, no, not of course, but you have, this was the top of the bigger pattern. Okay, and you can see it paused there, pulled back, went through the resistance, and then paused again and then took off. Okay, so again, I find a stock that I really like. I look on the daily chart to get some sort of a bias. I'm looking for a positive divergence with the MACD histogram. I'm looking for the MACD cross up at the same time that the stochastic is already pointing up. From there, I'm going to zoom in with an hourly chart looking for an entry that gives me decent risk reward. I'm going to use just a couple simple moving averages along with support and resistance levels to define a low risk entry, and I'm going to get in, and then after that I'm just going to play good defense. All right, let's look at one more example. Here's DOCU. Okay, another IPO stock, did really well, came back down, formed a base in here. Okay, popped out of the base, came back down and tested, and then moved up. Okay, when it popped out of the base, at the time the MACD here crossed up, whoops, gotta get rid of that. Okay, the same time the MACD crossed up, the stochastic was already trending up. Okay, it clears, here's the resistance level of the base, so it comes out. So when it breaks out here, I like it. It gets on my radar. The MACD is pointing up, stochastic's pointing up. Stock is looks like it's going to reassert its trend. And so this is like my bias here is to get long. But then the question is, where do I get long? So from here, again, I'm going to zoom in with an hourly chart, and I'm going to look for some sort of low risk entry. Maybe it flags up here. Okay, I don't know. Maybe it flags up here. But in this case, it actually pulled back. So let's zoom in with the 60 and see what we find. Okay, so the breakout was this. Okay, and as you can see here, it pulled back, found support at the hourly 200. You got several touches along there, forms like a little pattern here, which gives you a frame of reference. You could put a stop below the pattern. Also, you have the 50 here, which coincides with the top of the pattern. And as you can see, the stock breaks out. It spends, what is this? This is an hourly chart, so it spends 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours kind of sitting in this little range here. You can see one more little test right there, and then the stock takes off. Okay, so again, I get a bias from a longer term time frame. I zoom in with the 60-minute chart with a series of simple moving averages and support and resistance levels. I'm just looking for a decent entry that allows for a relatively tight stop, and then after that, it just simply becomes play good defense. Okay, again, trading is easy to learn, not easy to execute, so I try to keep things as simple as possible. Okay, thanks for listening. If you liked the video and want me to do more, give it a like and share it with your trading friends. You can also subscribe to my channel right here at YouTube. Come check us out at Leavitt Brothers, leavittbrothers.com, leavittbrothers.net. We provide market analysis and a lot of trading ideas. Again, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.